Morning. Welcome to the show this morning. Welcome to For the Health of It. Happy Thursday to everybody. It is a clear and snowless day this morning, which is a good thing today. That didn't quite happen yesterday. So those of you who missed winter or felt like we didn't get enough of it, I guess yesterday they were telling us that there is still winter to be had. But if you look outside today, it's all been taken care of. So happy Thursday morning. Hopefully it's a good day so far for you guys. We're going to talk about a few things about how to change some of these thought patterns. Sometimes we wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Sometimes we look outside in April and there's snow. And we start the day off by thinking some negative things. So we're going to talk a little bit about today about how to kind of avoid some of those issues. But anyway, I'm Dr. Scott Phillips, owner and operator of Lifestyle Chiropractic and Wellness Center in the Clock Tower building on Main Street. And I am excited to be your own personal healthcare expert for the next hour. We got some great things to talk about. As far as any activities or things going on in the valley, health related, again, as weather gets better, races start to happen. I know I've seen a few posted for down in the valley. We've got some American Fork races and some Utah County and Salt Lake County races. If you're one that likes to get out and do those, if you've never done a race before, 5K, 10K, something like that, it might be a fun thing to think about doing, or a bike race, or I don't know what other kind of races they do. They do swim races, they do triathlons. Anyway, so take a look at some of those events that are starting to come up outside. As far as something specifically Wasatch County related, or even close thereabouts. Not really a ton on the radar right now, but if you're ever wondering what's going on, classes, things like that, the one good resources I'd tell you I go to is WasatchWellnessNetwork.com. That's got any of these classes you're looking for. Again, there's that meditation on Thursdays over at Balance there, that Blue House there on 100 South. So there's lots to do. There's lots of ways to try to get healthy, and I'm hoping soon to have Rob Kinch back on the show. He was on last year during gardening time. But he started his gardening class over at Rivendell Farms. They're kind of associated and affiliated with Redmond Minerals. And so he's over there. He's doing a gardening class. I think he's pretty much once a month. I can't remember exactly the days. Maybe I can find that out for you before the show's over. I am alone in the studio today, so don't feel bad for me. But if you'd like to keep me company, want to call in and talk about anything you want to talk about, but specifically anything that we're talking about also, comments, questions, anything like that, feel free, of course. Grab your phones. Phone number here is 657-1340. That is 435-657-1340. And we'd love to have you on the air and give any comments that you may have. Let's get started with the article that I was reading. I actually posted this on Facebook and was interested in some of the comments and some of the interest that was shown. But basically, the study was first aired on CNN. I got it on KSL, but I know a lot of different news outlets are publishing this study, mainly because of some of the implications that it may have. So the study was that acetaminophen, which, if you don't know what acetaminophen is, it's basically Tylenol. Now, there's acetaminophen in a lot of other pain relievers and other types of medications. But Tylenol is the very most common, right? And so Midol is another one. Anyway, but there are about 600 other medicines that acetaminophen is the main ingredient. But Tylenol, Midol, those are the two that you should know. Anyway, a pain reliever for sure, one that is safe enough, right, for pregnant women to use. I know that's the one that they say, okay, well, if you're pregnant, you can have Tylenol because it's supposed to be not as harmful as some of the others. At any rate, what the study is that acetaminophen reduces not only pain, but pleasure too. Now, I'll go through this study and tell you what that means, but this is kind of very interesting, right, because it's a pain reliever. It's supposed to help us so we don't have as much pain. Some people take it for physical pain. There are other implications that can help with emotional issues also, that can kind of dampen some depression. So anyway, so this study basically was done, let's see, first it was published in the Psychological Science. Again, it was already known that acetaminophen blunts psychological pain, but the new research led us to believe the conclusion that it also blunted joy. In other words, it narrowed the range of feelings experienced. And so the idea here is if people are taking Tylenol, if people are taking acetaminophen for pain, that it can also kind of help psychologically and help kind of dampen some of these highs and lows of our psychological and emotional experience. So basically, they're looking at it now and saying, using Tylenol or some of these similar products will have broader consequences, right, than we previously thought. So the lead author was Jeffrey Durso. He's a doctoral student of social psychology at Ohio State. And anyway, he was the lead author on the study. So basically what they did is they got 82 college students, and 82 is not a huge sample size. Obviously, this is kind of just the beginnings of this research. So they got 82 of these students, and they showed them 40 photographs. Some of them highly pleasant images. Children with kittens, I guess, is a very highly pleasant image. And then highly unpleasant images like children who are malnourished, right? Some of these things that promote emotions, kind of promote us to think one way or the other. So half of these students were given an acute dose of acetaminophen, which is about 1,000 milligrams. Now, most of these tablets, if you buy Tylenol, come in 500 milligram tablets. So we're talking about 2 pills. So, not a huge dose by any means. Maybe just a real low kind of, hey, I kind of hurt a little bit, so I'll take a couple of pills. And then, of course, the other half were given the placebo that looked like the same pill but weren't. And then they asked the subjects to rate these photos according to how unpleasant or pleasant they were. And so the ones that took the acetaminophen rated all the photos less extremely than those who took the placebo. In other words, the positive photos were not seen as positively, and the negative photos were not seen as negatively. Now, the sense of magnitude in general was not altered. So it wasn't like it switched and said, oh, well, this was a negative image, but I'm viewing it positively. It was still seen negatively, just not quite as negatively, or positively, just not quite as positively. Now, the interesting part is that most people probably aren't aware of how their emotions may be impacted when they take acetaminophen. So these people weren't saying, oh, I kind of feel like I'm not quite as happy, or I don't, they weren't aware. And so they were taking the acetaminophen and thought everything was fine and rating these pictures as they thought normally and weren't aware. 23% of American adults, or 52 million people, use some sort of medicine containing acetaminophen every week. So we're talking about a fourth of the country, 52 million people weekly, that use some sort of acetaminophen medication. Now, the other part of the study was that the authors didn't know if other pain relievers like ibuprofen or aspirin, those are kind of the other two big ones as far as the over-the-counter stuff, have the same effect. So it's not like they were ruling these ones out. They just had decided that they wanted to test Tylenol. Because again, I think this is one that people see as a more benign, a lot more usable, less harmful, those types of things. So I read that research article, and again, it's a small number of people, which I understand. Hopefully it will prompt bigger studies and things like that. But again, I'm interested in what people think about this article, right? I'm interested in what this says for the overall emotional experience that we're having as human beings in this society, right? Again, 52 million people every week having their emotions dulled down, right? Not just the negative, but the positive. Simply because they're taking something for pain. Now, let's talk about pain and kind of what it is, right? Again, because most of us look at pain as something bad, right? It's this, and I'm not saying I like pain. Please don't misinterpret. But it's definitely viewed as something that needs to be ignored, something that needs to be dampened, something that needs to be taken away so we can continue our normal life. Right. My favorite example actually is, when I'm running races, especially long distance, really long distance, we'll be running and someone will pull out their ibuprofen, start taking ibuprofen mid-race. Right, because their knees are starting to hurt or their ankles are starting to hurt or something's going on that's giving them pain. And so while they're running, in order to continue to run, they're going to take this pain reliever, which I always just think is crazy because their body's telling them that something is going on, something's wrong, and they're just dampening it so they can continue doing the behavior that the body is trying to tell them not to do, right? I mean, hopefully this is kind of making a little bit of sense, but pain needs to be seen not as malfunction of the body, but it needs to be seen as the body telling us some issue is happening, right? This is a big red flag. This is all hands on deck, so to speak. Where the body's saying, hey, something's wrong, something's going on, we're going to tell you with this pain signal, and then we want you to take care of it. And by take care of it, most people reach for some sort of pain reliever so that they can continue about their daily activities without ever really changing the issue. So let me kind of highlight it, doing it a different way, right? You're driving down the freeway, and all of a sudden you look down and your check engine light comes on. That's a scary experience, right? Nobody likes the check engine light to come on because it can get a little crazy. Who knows what it could be. And so check engine light comes on, and so you continue to drive, and you just think, oh, this thing's annoying. I don't know what's going on. I don't really want to think about it. And so we get in our trusty, glove box, and we pull out some black electrical tape, and we snip off a little bit, and we cover that check engine light. And then all of a sudden we look down and all we can see is the tape, and it's black, so it blends in with the dashboard. And now the check engine light's not on anymore, right? We don't have to worry about it. We continue to drive like nothing happened, right? These are these things to ignore. We're not paying attention to what the problem is telling us. We're just saying, oh, okay, I hurt, so I'm going to take something for it. So what we're starting to realize with the ibuprofens, with the Tylenols and some of these other issues is there are side effects, there are problems, there are issues with taking these drugs in abundance. And I guess for me, I just look at it and I say, well, why would I not want to get to the root of the problem? If I hurt every day enough so that I have to take some sort of over-the-counter or prescribed prescription pain medication, what am I doing to make sure that that's not something that lasts forever? And hopefully we're going to do a show really soon on chronic pain. I know that's something that people really do deal with. But what are we doing? Again, we're usually just prompted to do something more than the over-the-counter pain relievers when they stop working, right? We say, well, I used to be able to take, 2 ibuprofen a day and I'd be okay, but now it's getting worse than that. And so now I'm deciding to investigate. Well, what if we started to investigate long before that happened, right? And so with this study on Tylenol, my interest is in the psychological ramifications, right? So if we're dulling our senses, if we're dulling our emotions to where we don't feel as happy or we don't feel as sad, what can that do and what can that implicate for society in general and being a member of society, right? And I guess this was the thought process and the thought pattern that I started to go on while I was reading this article. What about the rise in crime and gun violence in things like road rage, things like school shootings, right? All these things that are kind of on the rise and are very specifically American problems, right? Many other countries are not seeing the same kind of issues, and we like to blame the video games or blame the rap music or whatever else that is out there. But it's known that we take way more pills, drugs, chemicals, those types of things for our health issues than most of the world, right? Hopefully you knew that. If you didn't, now you do. But that is something very Western, very, very American to, hey, I've got a headache, hey, I've got a backache, I've got something, reach in the medicine cabinet, grab whatever pill's there, take it, hopefully that takes care of it. And until it doesn't, that's just what we're going to do to take care of that pain. But why not look now and say, hey, if this is playing on our emotions, if this is making it so negative images aren't seen so negatively and positive images aren't seen so positively, I think that the implications are very wide-reaching, right? I feel like this is an issue now that we have to take far away from just taking some pills to relieve some pain, and saying what other things are these chemicals doing to our general life experience. And so I said specifically, right, things like road rage. Well, this is one that's very interesting to me, right? What makes it okay for someone to run someone off the road because they, maybe cut them off, or, some of these things that you say, why would a human, who is rational thinking, get to a point where they can do this, right? Any of these crazy things that kind of are on the rise. And you say, well, if that human is taking pills or taking medication or altering their emotional state, and unknowingly, right? Again, I think it's different with people that have, emotional, chemical type of issues, that they're taking these psychological drugs and things like that. Those people are kind of more aware. But what if I'm not aware? Let's say I'm someone that struggles with knee pain or something very common, and I take a few, Tylenols here and there, not really the whole day, but, maybe every other day or something like that. And it's starting to play with my emotions. And again, this study just had them take it one time. What about this storing of, hey, we take it over and over and over for years? My other thought was in pregnant women, right? These women take these drugs, especially Tylenol, because it's like the only safe one, right? If anyone's been pregnant out there and you get a list of pain relievers or other types of things that are safe during pregnancy, this one is top on the list. They say Tylenol's no problem. It doesn't, affect the baby, which may or may not be true, but it can affect the mom. And so now we see things like postpartum depression is on the rise big time, right? We're starting to see a lot more of that. Well, what if it has something to do with taking the Tylenol and altering the emotional state while we're pregnant or afterwards, to where now we don't feel the highs of highs and the lows of lows? I think there's implications there as well. I see this as being some sort of almost a Pandora's box that we open up when we say, hey, Tylenol may be providing you with a little bit of pain relief, but here are some of the things that we're doing for our emotional state. And I think the research, or at least the clinical data of people that can't experience the full range of human emotion, and what that really means for their personality and things like that, is clear that this is something we don't want to be tampering with. So anyway, again, if you have any thoughts about this and want to chat about it a little bit, I welcome your phone calls, 657-1340. I just am very interested in this study and what it means for what people have been taking for a very long time for simple pain issues. And then as someone who is a practitioner and someone who sees people and deals with people that are in painful situations, it also just makes me think, there are other ways to deal with pain, right? So if those of you out there and say, again, you wake up and you say, oh, I've got a mild this or a small that, again, it's not anything to feel alarmed. It's not anything that I want to go to a doctor about. And so we just pop one of these quick pills for fast relief, and then all of a sudden we don't have it anymore. Maybe the next week or the week after or something like that, it happens again. I would be one to try other things first, right? And whether it's an essential oil, I think those things can be very, very helpful. Whether it's a natural supplement, whether it is a practitioner, can be very, very affordable to go to some of these maintenance or preventative types of healthcare practitioners. Go and try to figure out what's going on. and maybe don't let the Tylenol bottle or the ibuprofen or whatever else it is be the go-to or be the first line of defense. Right? Even a heating pad has less side effects for sure and can be very helpful too. So that's kind of the soapbox on pain relievers in general. But I think as more research is done on all of them, we're really going to start to find out that that what we've been taking for a long period of time, I think, has more effects, not just on the pain that we're trying to relieve, or even the digestive system. Right, that was a big thing that came out a little while ago with ibuprofen in the digestive system, and we know all the digestive issues that people are having. So anyway, interesting article for me. I think hopefully it will spur more research and we'll be able to get a little more into this. But I would say if you're one of those that's what you grab, that's your go-to, I would start paying attention to how much. Again, this study was just 1,000 milligrams at one time, and it dulled those emotions, which is 2 pills general. 23% of America taking a dose like that at least weekly. So maybe start to pay attention to see how long you go, you go between doses, how often you take them, how many in a week, that type of thing, and maybe look at other areas of your life and wonder if maybe this has some sort of effect. So that would be my idea for you if that's something that you do. It leads us very nicely into what I wanted to kind of talk about today, and that is the power and the benefits to a positive mindset and positive thinking. Now, again, when we're talking about optimist versus pessimist, right? Glass half empty, glass half full type of people. It's very interesting when you ask people to kind of rate themselves or say, hey, are you an optimist? Are you a pessimist? Most pessimists like to use the word realist because they don't like the word pessimist because it has some negative connotations. But let's talk about positive thinking. Let's talk about what some of the benefits are. Now, those who are generally prone to more positive thinking, here are some of the health benefits that I think are very interesting. First of all, an increased lifespan. So again, one thing, if you want to increase your lifespan, positive thinking can be the key. Lower rates of depression, lower levels of distress, greater resistance to diseases such as the common cold, better psychological and physical well-being, reduced risk of death from cardiovascular disease, and better coping skills during hardships and times of stress. So again, it's just as simple, right? I love that old sketch on Saturday Night Live about daily affirmations, right? Stuart Smalley, if you remember this guy, who sat in front of the mirror and talked about how he's good enough and smart enough, and doggone it, people like him, right? But this positive thinking, these mindsets, right? I kind of joked, when we wake up in the morning, what's the first thing that we think of? Do we look out the window and say, I can't believe it's snowing, what is going on? And we start this negative thought process. Or do we look out the window and say, oh, look how pretty it is. We haven't seen snow most of the winter. Here are some to look at. I mean, these are these two different thought patterns that start your day. So first of all, you talk about, okay, well, how do I really rate myself as a positive or negative thinker? And really the best way that we can do that is by paying attention to what's called our self-talk. Now, self-talk can sound kind of funny because we're not supposed to talk to ourselves, right? That's kind of a weird and strange thing, but we all do it, right? And not maybe vocally, but what's going on in our mind, right? If we pay attention to these thoughts that we have about ourselves, and I talk about that first thought that you have when you look in the mirror, right? You wake up in the morning and you slept for a little while and you got creases places and your hair looks weird and maybe some drool somewhere, and you look in the mirror and you start to have these self-talk thoughts. Or other situations, not necessarily just body image, but what I'm going to eat or what I'm thinking about, what's going on in the room. These are these thoughts that we have to ourselves. This is what we call self-talk. Now, if there are other voices in your head besides your own, then this is something different. You may want to go get that checked out. But your thoughts, if you recognize you, if it's your own person talking to you, then that's what we're kind of looking at as far as the self-talk. So start to evaluate the self-talk. What do you say to yourself usually? Is it usually in a positive manner, or is there a lot of negativity to it? So we want to identify some of these patterns that we have in our negative thinking. And so here are a couple of these common forms of negative self-talk. Okay, the first one is filtering. Now, this is something that we do. I know a lot of people do this. It's a very interesting concept. And so basically what happens is we have this situation, and we like to magnify the negative aspects. Right, so let's say we had a really good day at work. You complete all your tasks ahead of time. You were complimented for doing a great job. And that evening, all you can think about is all the other tasks and all the other things that you have to do, and you don't really dwell at all on any of the positive things. We filter these experiences that we have, right? Let's say we're at school, and 6 of the 7 classes we do really well in, have a great time, get some tests back that we got good scores on. But let's say math class, it was just a struggle, and so we get home and automatically the day was bad because that's all we can focus on. So you might be one that filters experiences and just thinks on the negative. The second one is personalizing. This is great. I do this myself with sports teams, right? When something bad occurs, it's your fault, right? I wish I shouldn't have changed my socks because my team lost last night. Why did I do that? And so we automatically think there's something wrong with that we did that made this negative thing happen, right? And so we just blame ourselves constantly. Even finding weird roundabout ways to do it. Oh, if I had just left the office 5 minutes earlier, then that accident that I didn't even cause but that I saw might not have happened, because who knows? We just find these weird ways to personalize and blame ourselves. So when something bad happens, is that the first thing that you do? Is that you find some way to make it your fault? That is called personalizing. Now, catastrophizing. I like this one because it's a fun word to say anyway. But catastrophizing is just anticipating the worst. And this for sure is something that I've been guilty of. But let's say in the morning you go through the drive-thru and they get your order wrong. Right, which I wouldn't want you to do anyway, but let's say that's something you do, and they get your order wrong in the morning, and you think that's a bad omen, and the rest of the day is going to be bad. Right? You guys have done this. You get out of bed, you stub your toe, something like that. The hair dryer is broken. There's something that happens. And you think, oh, great, this is going to be a bad day because of that, right? We see things as negative omens and get nervous. And what that does is then now all the small negative things that happen throughout that day, we're going to go back and blame to this one first experience. And we're going to ignore any of the good things that happen. Now, the last one that they talk about is polarizing. And this one is definitely one you'll see too. Everything is either a good experience or a bad experience. There's no middle ground. There's not room for some good peppered with some bad. It's either good or it's bad, right? If we had a perfect day, then it was good. If something bad happened, it was a complete failure. And my son, actually my 8-year-old, was kind of talking about this the other day, which sort of got me on this idea of looking into this type of thinking. But he told me kind of a similar thing, that he said, how come there's got to be something bad that happens every day? I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, even if we're having a fun day and we're playing and we're having a good time, what if I trip over something? Or what if, what if I spill my water? Or, just something little that now he's trying to say that makes that day a bad day. Then it can't be a good day because something bad happened. Instead of looking at it and saying, wow, look at all this good that happened today, and then there was a negative experience, there was something bad that happened, but that doesn't necessarily make the day bad. And so those are the four things. We've got filtering, we've got personalizing, we've got catastrophizing, we've got polarizing. And these are ways to start our mindset on a negative kind of cycle, right? A downward spiral. Again, that puts us in that defensive mode almost. And again, what you have to realize is these negative emotions, these negative thought processes, those types of things, they put us into stress physiology. And I've talked on the show a lot about stress physiology and how negative it can be in the long term. But this is a big reason why positive thinkers generally tend to not see these harmful effects of the long-term stress response, because they are adept at recognizing the good and kind of resetting and not letting some of these things pull them down, especially things that really aren't their fault, right? Again, we talk about personalizing, and how many of you just say, oh, this must be my fault. So the activity for you, and again, I feel like there are positive people that are prone to think negatively sometimes. I feel like there are negative people that do think positively. I don't think it's all black or white, right? I'm not a polarizer in this circumstance. But what I feel like is when we start to hear our self-talk, can we categorize it into one of these different areas? And if we can, then we can guarantee that we're sort of on the road to this negative thought processes and these negative ways to view the world. Again, we're all having the same experience, the same life experience. It's so interesting to think that my neighbor is going to have a completely different day than me, even though we're living in the same area, we're living next door to each other, but our days will be completely different. And not only that, I might have a great day, and he or she might feel like their day was awful. And we have the same, types of surroundings, that kind of stuff. So the exercise is, as you hear yourself self-talking, as you start to see this self-talk, is it leading you down a negative pathway, or is it leading you up a positive pathway? And if you're one that starts to realize that, hey, a lot of these times I'm thinking and I'm talking to myself lead to negative situations, then we're ones that need to maybe change that direction. And so there are ways to do it. Now, first of all, I don't want anyone to think that it's really simple, right? Why don't you just think more positively, right? I'll smack you upside the head and flip a switch, and now all of a sudden I'm a positive thinker. Again, I don't think anyone is 100% one way or the other. And so it's always a journey, right? We talk about healthcare and healthy living being a journey in general. And so this one is a journey to just try day to day to think more positively, whether or not it's something that comes naturally or something that we have to work at. It's not a switch that can be flipped, a flip that can be switched. It's not a switch that we can just flip and say, oh, I'm now a positive person. So again, I'm all about small changes, right? Small things. Let's start small. Let's add good. And so I'll give you some ideas now to say, okay, well, how can we change? How can we just start to shift without feeling like, oh, well, I'm just going to hide my negative emotions and just try to smile, right? So here are some things that we can try to do, okay? The first thing is we want to identify areas to change. Again, I don't think we can just say today, okay, I'm going to turn from being a negative person to a positive person. It's just not that easy. But how can we identify some of these really specific areas? All right, if you want to become more optimistic, engage in more positive thinking, first let's identify these areas that we typically think negatively about, okay? So where is the negative thought coming from? Is it work? Is it just the commute to work? Is it school? Is it, there are all these types of places. Is it coming home from work? Is it the hour after we put the kids to bed? I mean, where is it that you start to realize, is it right in the morning, right? Is that the first thing that we do? So let's identify these areas first so we can start to tackle them, right? If we can focus on these small areas, if it's work, now work is a long time. We spend a lot of time at work. So maybe it's the beginning of work. Maybe it's the first hour that I'm trying to get settled and I start to think negatively about the day. Maybe it's the end of work where I'm looking back and thinking I didn't accomplish anything, right? Identify one of these areas and then start to just work specifically on it. Don't worry about the rest of it, because once you conquer one, then you can go to the next. And so where is it that you have the most negative thoughts, the most negative self-talk? And that's the time to start to think about, okay, maybe I can change this. Is it late at night when we're thinking about our day, right? How many people have a hard time falling asleep because all they can do is focus on what happened that day? And maybe there's a negative side of that. And so maybe we need to just be focusing on the good, and that could be a time to change. The second thing, you need to check yourself. And obviously, you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? That's a common phrase. But just periodically throughout the day, just stop, kind of take a self-evaluation and evaluate your thoughts. And if at that point in time, most of your thoughts are mainly negative, then you want to try to start to positively spin them. Right? And don't just pick times in the day where you feel like you are negative. Just generally on a whim, say, hey, I'm going to kind of evaluate myself. And it can be really quick and easy. And maybe at that point in time, no, I'm thinking very positively. That's great. Give yourself a pat on the back. But it's always good to kind of self-evaluate and think, how am I doing right now, right? The third thing, you want to be open to humor, right? Give yourself permission to smile or laugh, especially during the difficult times. When you can see funny things and you can laugh at life, laugh at yourself, it's a very de-stressing type of a thing. It's a way to lighten what's going on. It's a way to kind of look at it at a different angle. And so that for me is definitely one of the ways. I enjoy humor. I'm one that likes to kind of put humorous spins on things, and so that's one of my mechanisms, and it could work for a lot of people, right? I think if you just kind of think, hey, what are some funny situations at work that maybe can be viewed in the moment as very, something that can push me into a negative thought pattern. But if we look outside and kind of step back from the situation, look at it and say, you know what, that can be seen as pretty humorous, then all of a sudden, if that kind of situation comes up again, you'll have that in the back of your mind. Now, the next one's one I think is very, very helpful, and you want to follow a healthy lifestyle. So, again, negative people generally don't really take care of themselves very well. It's just something that they don't find as a priority. They feel like they've tried to do good, and sometimes get overwhelmed with the changes they feel like they need to make. But exercising at least 3 times a week will positively affect your mood and reduce your stress. I mean, the research is so clear that if you're one that's a high-stressed individual that thinks negatively, that has mood issues, exercise is very, very helpful for that. And so find a way to fit some movement into your routine. Again, 3 times a week is the minimum, just to kind of get some mood enhancement. If you can't do 3 times a week, I don't know, you got to find a way. Healthy diet also, right? And we talk about what that means here. It's just eating more produce, right? Increase your fruits and vegetables. I feel like I say that a lot, but that's really a good way to positively affect your diet. And then also stress management techniques. Obviously, anything that you do that you know of that says, hey, this is something that I can do to help myself get out of a stressful mindset, can always reboot the system, can always make it so those negative thought processes kind of halt, and we can start thinking in a more positive manner. But generally following a healthy lifestyle can be very, very helpful to getting out of these negative thought patterns. Now, the next one is one that I'm really, really, I really advocate. I'm not sure if we know as much about it as we are going to, hopefully, in the future. But this one is surrounding yourself with positive people. Now, again, I don't think this is a hard one for people to grasp. It might be a hard one for people to practice, though. Again, you are who your friends are. In fact, I read a thing that someone said, if you want a really good look into someone's personality, take a look at the 4 or 5 people that they're closest with, and they're very similar. And so if you're one that hangs out with negative thinking people, it's very easy for that to be contagious, quote unquote, right? You've been in these groups, right? You sit down, let's say you've been having a great day. You sit down with some people and they start venting and belly aching about something, and then someone else chimes in, and you almost feel left out, and so you've got to think of something else to complain about too, and then all of a sudden it just becomes this complaining session that doesn't really accomplish anything, but it just kind of goes in this negative direction, right? And again, this is something that's keeping our stress levels up. It's not the way to fight some of these issues. So if you're surrounding yourself, if you realize that, hey, when I hang out with my friends, I kind of leave feeling a little less uplifted. I feel a little more, have a few more issues. That can be something that can be affected. I've got a caller here. We're going to answer it really quickly and see if there's someone that wants to talk. So hold on real quick. KTMP, you're on the air.
Well, may I speak with Kerry Hobbs, please?
Kerry is not here right now. He comes in on about 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock most days.
Would you give him a message for me, please?
I'm not sure where I'd even leave him a message. I'm kind of right in the middle of my show right now. If you wouldn't mind calling back during his time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so sometimes we get callers and sometimes we don't. But, Kerry, if you're listening, someone wants to get a hold of you. So let's talk about our friends again, right? We want to surround ourselves with these positive people, because now let's do the reverse, right? Let's say you had kind of a negative day, some things went not your way, and you get in a group of your friends and all they can talk about is the good things that happened to them. Now, if they're talking a lot about them, it might be a little annoying, so I can understand that too. But generally, it starts to help you spin that way. Again, I like, my friends kind of show me different ways to look at situations in a more positive manner. When people don't get as irritated or as quickly irritated about things, then it's easier for us not to be irritated. And so when we surround ourselves with positive thinking people, not only do we start to think more positively, but then you also kind of get your own patterns to start to think positively. You start to think, hey, well, when Jim had a similar situation, this is how he dealt with it, right? And on the negative side, you can do the same thing. Oh, well, when Sally had this happen to her, she reacted this way, and so I'm going to react the same way. And so your friends and those who your circle of influence, definitely help dictate the way that you deal with things on a positive and negative manner. So if you're one that has negative friends and you're trying to be a positive person, I don't think you need to necessarily tell them to hit the road. But I'm all about adding the good, right? So then maybe find at least one positive friend and say, hey, you're going to be my positive friend, and we're going to hang out more, even though I've still got some of these negative Nellies hanging out too. And so I think that's one that can be very, very effective. So I would definitely kind of evaluate your own circle of friends, your own circle of influence, and see generally where these people are. And maybe it's a time where you have an intervention with them and say, look, we are a negative thinking group. We need to change into a positive thinking group, so we're going to invite some positive thinking people into our circle, and hopefully they can start turning us around. And I think that is an okay thing to do. I'm not sure if anyone would be offended. Of course, maybe if they are, then they're not ready to change into positive thinking people, and you can tell them, well, that's okay, then I'll speak at your funeral because I'm supposed to have a longer life expectancy by being a positive person. So anyway, that is a good idea too. Now, practicing positive self-talk is the other thing too. And again, if you're not one that practices self-talk in general, it can seem a little strange to begin with, right? I mean, we sometimes think, and we don't think that we're thinking, but if we all of a sudden realize that, hey, I'm talking to myself, so to speak, then we feel a little weird and awkward about it. But if you can start to talk to yourself in a better manner, then that's another way to change it. And I love the idea that somebody told me one time that if we spoke to ourselves like we spoke to other people, that if we spoke to other people like we speak to ourselves, that we wouldn't have many friends, right? I mean, if you think about it, who is your toughest critic, right? Who is the person that really comes down on you the hardest? And for the most part, it's usually us. We're way less forgiving with ourselves than other people are with us, and that we are with other people. Right? Some things that you do or traits that you have, can easily overlook if someone that you know has the same problems or the same struggles or the same characteristics. Right? But when we see them in ourselves, it's all of a sudden unforgivable. And so it's very important, I think, to start to talk to ourselves nicer, right? To start to this self-talk, that we just start to say, hey, you know what? And again, it's not about self-esteem. It's not about these types of things. It's really just about how can I continue to keep my thought processes and thought patterns in a positive direction. And the easiest way to get out of the positive direction of things is to really focus on something on ourselves very negatively, right? And we can all find things that we need to work on. I've got a million, maybe more. But I can focus on some of the good things that I've been doing, right? And I see this in nutrition very often, right? It's very easy to do a lot of really good things in our eating, and only focus on the negative things that we do. Oh, I blew it because I ate a donut today, or I blew it because, whereas the whole day was good, but then we do one small thing, or even our exercise routines. Oh, I did so good this week, but I missed one day, and then we get really down on ourselves and we think, why can't I do better? Instead of embracing and applauding that rest of the day, right? If someone else had come up to you and told you about their day and compared it to what your day was like, you would forgive them, right? You would tell them how great they did, and you would really try to celebrate the accomplishments more than try to dwell on the negatives. But when we look at ourselves, it seems like all we can do is dwell on the negative. And so again, practicing this positive self-talk. How do we talk to ourselves? How do we say, I talk about the morning, right? I've done this a few times, but what's your first thought to yourself when you look in the mirror in the morning? Is it, wow, I should change this, or I wish I had this, or I wish I didn't have these, circles under my eyes, or whatever? Or do you look in the mirror and say, wow, it's another day, look how good I look, do a little flexing, that kind of thing, and start that day off on that positive note, talking to yourself positively. And I promise you, as one that's tried to be a positive thinker and a positive person and generally an optimistic person, it really does take work to keep yourself out of those negative thought processes. It's very easy to get lost in being a critic to yourself. And so today, if you could do one thing, be nicer to yourself, okay? Just when you're ready to lay into yourself and think about all these negative things that you need to change, think of some of these positive things that you're doing well. And we can all find them, right? Again, last night at UVU Wasatch, they had a couple young men speak to the students. And you may recognize the names Dale Lawrence and Porter Hancock. And both of these young men very recently were involved in life-changing and very injury type of accidents, where both of them were sports injuries, and both of them were spinal cord injuries, and have lasting effects from some of these things. And they were talking about their own lives and their own struggles, and kind of where how they manage to live a normal life, basically, or try to think more positively with these disabilities they have. And I know that they don't do it for me to look at them and say, hey, he's in a wheelchair and I'm not, so what do I have to be mad about? But if we ever think that we're in the worst possible situation and we get these negative thought processes going and we're thinking how bad it can it get any worse, right? How many times have we said that just to be proved right that it can, or wrong that it can get worse? But some of these problems are so short term. They're so nothing really that significant when we're talking about a long term idea, but we dwell on it so much. And so we get involved in these thought processes, and you have to know that proteins are manufactured, that synapses are hardwired, and it's very pattern like to think in these general ways. And so be nicer to yourself today. Now, when you see something that you don't like about yourself, look at 3 things that you do like about yourself. And I'm talking, hey, I've got all 10 toes. Hey, I've got 9 out of 10, right? That's 90%. That's not bad. I've got both my arms. Think of some of these things that yeah, you know what? We could all change something little, but generally there's a lot of good going on. And again, I think this is part of that filtering that we do, and part of that these things that we do. Anyway, so if you'll practice talking nicely to yourself, then it starts to come without even doing it. And so today, I want everyone that's listening to do something and look at themselves, or just talk nicer to yourself today. Because again, if you want to be a friend to yourself, you should talk to yourself the way that you talk to your friends, and forgive yourself for the things that you forgive your friends for also. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of some of this negative self-talk that is common, and then hopefully some ideas that you can kind of put a positive spin on it instead, okay? So the first one is, I've never done this before. Right? We think, okay, well, here's an opportunity. So we get a task, or we're supposed to do something, and immediately think, oh, but this is something I've never done before, and it kind of gets nervous to us, and we're not really sure, and it'd be easier not to do it, right? You think, oh, it'd just be easier not to do it. In fact, I was involved in a youth activity last night, and we were going to do a service project outside with raking leaves and cleaning up, spring cleaning, because it was spring 3 days ago. But with the snow and all that kind of stuff, we had to scramble and do something else. So we did a game night, and we had different groups, and people went into different rooms and played different games. And these were kind of icebreaker type of, we weren't playing Scrabble. We were doing things kind of that were outside of some people's comfort zones. But it was very interesting to see everybody start to embrace it. And when it's something new and something we don't know and something that maybe is outside of our comfort zone, it's hard to start up. But then once we get into it, and that was the fun thing, is seeing these youth really get into these activities, and some of the most shy were some of the most outgoing when they really got a hold of it. And so when we think, oh, I've never done it before, that makes us nervous when we start to think negatively. Instead, the positive spin would be, hey, this is an opportunity to learn something new. I learned 2 fun new games last night that I think would be really fun to play in, just general circles. And so that was an opportunity that I had to learn something new. Now, this is one I think of all the time, especially when someone's trying to give me directions to go somewhere. I think to myself, it is too complicated. Right? How many times have we been faced with a situation that we just feel like, oh, it's too complicated, and that's this overwhelming feeling like, oh, how am I going to get this all done? I can't remember this or that. Instead of that, think, hey, maybe I'll tackle it from a different angle, or maybe there's something else that I can do to make it seem less complicated. How about, have you ever thought, oh, I don't have the resources? This is something that I can't do because I don't have things available to me that I should have, and so I'm just going to forget about it. Well, the positive way to think about it is, well, necessity is the mother of invention, right? If I need new resources, it's time to find ways to expand my area of influence. Time to expand, maybe it's another tool that I need. Hey, this is a good opportunity to work on some things. Now, I always call myself lazy because I feel like I kind of am, but the negative way of thinking, oh, I'm just too lazy to get this done. I think calling yourself lazy is not a nice way to talk to yourself, right? You wouldn't call your friends lazy. Well, maybe you would if they really do have a problem, but But calling yourself lazy doesn't do you any favors. So instead, try to think why you feel like you don't want to do it, right? I wasn't able to fit it into my schedule, but I'm going to re-examine, kind of reevaluate some of my priorities and say, hey, instead of catching up on, the next season or whatever show on Netflix, because that's a fun thing that I do when I feel lazy. Instead of doing that, I'm going to reevaluate my priorities and try to get this done. How many times do we deal in absolutes again, right? There's no way that this can work, right? We shut down the idea, we shut down the because we think, oh, there's just no way this is going to work. Well, I can try to make it work, right? I mean, open-mindedness. If you think, oh, this, sometimes you just have to do it for your own benefit, right? We were down in St. George for spring break, had a great spring break. And I am sometimes accused of being very sure in my own thought processes and thought patterns, and can't be wrong. And so sometimes I have a hard time letting other people express their opinions and ideas because I feel like mine are always right and the best. And I get in trouble for this a lot of times, especially from my wife, who I love and who sometimes thinks I don't validate her very much, but it's just because I really think that I'm right all the time. And so sometimes I have to just not be right. I have to think, you know what? I think I'm right. I'm sure that I'm right. But right now, it's more important to validate someone else, and just let that happen. And you know what? Probably half the time I was right, and the other half the time I wasn't right. And I'm glad that I listened to that person. But sometimes it has to be a conscious effort to say, you know what? Even though I think this is wrong, even though I don't think this can happen, I'm going to try it. I'm going to go for it, and we'll see what happens. How about change, right? Nobody likes change, and so anytime we're faced with change, we think, oh, no, that's too big, that's too radical. I can't make that type of change. I can't eat more fruits and vegetables, right? They're expensive. Today in my class, we're actually going to talk about how to try to transition better into making these changes, because no one really, change is hard, right? And so instead of thinking, oh, that's too radical to change, think, hey, you know what? Let's take a chance. What do we have to lose? If I want to try to make a change in my life, sometimes it's about proving people right and wrong. Hey, this guy on the radio keeps talking that my life's going to be better if I just eat more fruits and vegetables, but I don't want to make that change. It's too radical of a change for me. Well, you know what? I'm going to try it out just to see if I can prove this guy wrong. I'm going to do 2 months or a week or 2 weeks of eating more fruits and vegetables, and at the end, if I don't feel different, I'm going to call his show and tell him he was wrong. Like, if that's your motivation, go for it. But take a chance. See if some of these changes can be good for you. Some people think, hey, I'm never going to get better at this, right? I mean, when a task is hard, it seems like it's always going to be hard, right? When you go out for that first run, and you get my first run, I think I got maybe. I don't think I even got a quarter mile down the road before I was sucking wind and having to stop and having to reevaluate my priorities, so to speak. And guess what? The next day I got about the same distance and had to stop again. It was not each day got better. It was hard every single day. And I could have just stopped and said, you know what? This is just too hard. I'm not getting any better. I'm not going to get any better. Because we have this short-term thinking. If I look back and think, wow, how far that I've come in this many years, I think that can help kind of change that mentality, right? So instead of, oh, this is never going to get easier, hey, I'm going to give it another try. I'm going to try it again. I'm going to try it again. And I promise eventually it's going to get easier. Now, it's going to take a little while. And that's why you got to keep this negative self-talk of saying, oh, it's never going to happen. I'm not going to be able to get any better. And keep that at bay, and then start to say, hey, I'll just give it another try. I'm going to try again tomorrow. I'm going to try again the next day. And if we miss a day, again, instead of negative self-talk, you dummy, how come you can't do this? Right? Again, we say, all right, well, we missed a day. We're going to start again tomorrow. Why do we want to think more positively? Again, it has everything to do with your health. It's this outlook. It's this idea. It's this more positive. The more positive you are, the more positive experiences that you have. the more enjoyment and fulfillment you get out of these small everyday things, right? If we can learn to focus on the positive aspects of our lives and really help kind of change, help us change what the negative things are, but not dwell on those things, then again, health-wise, we get a ton of benefits. I read them a little while ago. Longer life expectancy, shorter or smaller chance of dying from cardiovascular disease, less stress in our lives, those types of things. If we can really master getting to thinking positively. And so, my I guess final thought and idea for you is today practice some of these things. Really try to get in more of a positive mindset, because I promise if you do, then what's going to happen is you'll really start to notice that that the practice turns into subconscious, right? As you really work on being a positive person, your subconscious will start to take over, because you'll get that enjoyment out and you'll realize that's where it comes from. So that's my idea for you guys today. Hopefully you get out there. Hopefully you get healthy. Do something good for yourself. Tell yourself something nice today. If you do it for no other reason, do it just for the health of it.